Great. So, I mean, we are not going to labor around the bush. We're going to really delve straight into the matter. So, a research paper can also be, called a research article, journal article, research manuscripts. Those are different terminologies that you would find in the literature and in the scientific world to actually mean the same thing. But in fact, what is a research paper? It is actually a scientific output that contains, the report of a research investigation that has been carried out already by a scientist or a researcher or a group of scientists and researchers who, in the case of a research paper, are now called authors because they are authoring that particular research work. And so first things first, you should be able to know that research papers, research articles or manuscripts are published in research journals, right? And there are, and in the scientific world, this work or these different types of work are published in what we call scholarly journals or scientific journals, because we have other forms of publications, and they can be peer reviewed or not, but we know that most journals nowadays do what we call a peer review procedure. So what is a peer reviewed procedure? It means you as an author, you've carried out you've written your manuscript and you sent to the journal. That particular research article, that particular paper has to be scrutinized by your peers. In other words, by your colleagues, because it will not be proper for anyone to do any research work and just send to a journal and the journal publishes it without it being well scrutinized and to make sure that that particular piece of information in the research paper fits into current science and current thinking and follows a particular methodology. And so that's the importance of the peer review process, and it gives credibility to your research paper. So many journals nowadays do a peer review process. So simply put, your work is scrutinized by your peers, by your colleagues, and not by yourself. So, and then, as I said, this is usually published in scientific or scholarly journals. And so, as I mentioned a while ago, so research paper in scholarly journals are quite different from what we see in popular press, although we know that certain scientific outputs, can be released in popular press. Many scientists now do what we call a press release after a particular important finding. So, but a research paper will follow a codified method of writing. And of course, it's written by researchers or students or scientists, like some of you here. And the particular audience, it's for other researchers. So it's geared and is directed towards other researchers. And of course, a popular press, even when research is released in popular press, we know it's written by journalists, and generally the audience is the general public. And so the language is going to be different when you write a research paper to be published in scholarly journals, or you're writing a research article or a news snip of your research to be published in maybe a newspaper or a magazine meant for public consumption. So the language has to be different. And so why do we actually write research papers? And why will it be important for some of you here present in this particular workshop to be involved in writing research papers or research articles? I think the first thing I've put here is that it is important for knowledge creation. Dr. 𝐒𝐜𝐴𝐤𝐬𝐻, while she was speaking, she mentioned that lots of people do research. Research is being done in several schools, several departments, and it ends up, just lying on the tables. And the knowledge that has been created, it's not put out there for the scientific world to know about it. And so in some way, when that is done, you're doing a disservice to science, and you are actually limiting the flow of knowledge creation and information. And so by publishing your research, you are participating in knowledge creation and building a particular thought collective of a particular topic at that point in time. You are contributing to knowledge dissemination. You're making what you have done, what you've discovered, known to the rest of the scientific community. And also you're building scientific credibility and professional credibility. We know, especially if you are in academia, if you are working in a research-oriented organization, the number or your number of scientific publications can play a very vital or pivotal role for you in some certain professional ascendancy. So research publication is important to build your scientific credibility, and then important to build your professional credibility as you grow in your profession. So very important. And so there is no particular formula for this very first part. This is the way I have, for didactic reasons, as we say, or for reasons for comprehension this morning, I have separated the different types of research papers into 3 different categories. You have the original research papers, you have that are data-driven, you have review articles, and you have others, which I also called based on expert opinions. So research papers, as I said, they are commonly, I mentioned this in the past, they are commonly published in scholarly journals. And really, this is the slide. And as you're going to learn as we go along, what I call the $1 million slide for this particular presentation, this is it. Which carries the message of this particular presentation. So as I mentioned, you have original research papers that are primarily data-driven. You have reviews, and you have papers that are based on expert opinions, and which I've called here expert expose. So you have original research, you have case reports, you have images in clinical medicine, which you can participate in, all right. You can either do a review, systematic review, scoping reviews, or you do systematic review and meta-analysis, which we are going to talk a little bit about. Or you can decide to do an essay, and commentary article, or editorials, or letter to the editor. Not forgetting that there are specific journals now that you can publish a protocol of a research that you are about to do, or you can publish what is called a data analysis plan on how you're going to carry out data analysis for a particular project. So there are certain journals that do accept these forms of manuscripts as well. So you should have that at the back of your mind. So as I said, this is what you need to know in terms of the different types of research papers or research articles. There are many other variants which we are going to go into in a minute. So let's look at original research papers and the different variants of these that exist in different scholarly journals. So I've talked here about original research paper, short reports, or research notes. As I said, there are many others that variants, but these are the main ones. So the original research paper actually carries the full report, covering everything a particular researcher has done, from the research idea through research analysis. So really from start to finish. And as I said, it's the commonest type of research manuscript that is written and that is published in many journals in the world. And it would usually follow the IMRAD format, which simply stands for Introduction, Method, Result, and Discussion. It has a basic structure as you move from one journal to the other. And so, yeah, in the original research paper, the author is just bringing the report of what he has found out after his research. So results, and it's usually would accept anything from 4,000 to 5,000 words. So this is really, I think the key words here is that it's a full report. It's a full report. So that is it for that original research paper. So like the studies that most of you have undertaken after your medical school, after your BSc or master's or PhD, that kind of primary study where you go out, you collect data, you've written your thesis, your dissertation, or your memoir, that kind of work can easily be translated into an original research paper because that fits this particular description. It's an original research project that has been carried out. So that's an original research paper. And as I said, a variant of this original research paper would be a short or an abridged version, which some journals would call a short report or a brief report. This will still follow the IMRAD format, but usually will now be limited to 1,500 to 200. So you must develop skills to summarize the main things or the main ideas in the different research structure, in the different IMRAD structure to fit a particular short report that will require 1,500 or 2,000 words. So the idea behind short versions is actually to give the readers, a fast and rapid view. You might have conducted research and you think that that particular research, there would be lots of repetition if you want to put it out there in a full report. If you want to pass out a one straight, small, strong message, you might decide to go for a short version, 1,500 words, instead of going through an original research paper. So what I usually advise here is if your research project is small, aim for a short report which is precise and concise. But if you really have a large research project, then you should aim for an original research publication that can take about 4,000 to 5,000 words. So, and then you have research notes, which are very popular if you actually read manuscripts from BMC journals. So these are really brief, versions, would really carry pilot data or maybe preliminary data, or just really simply simple exploratory findings. Or maybe you're using a particular new method for data collection or data analysis. And so we'll usually fit around 1,500 words. So the main idea, is that if you've carried out some pilot work and you want to publish that pilot work, then research notes might fit that particular description for you. Of course, case reports for those of us who are clinicians, who are in the hospital, medical students, medical doctors, you see patients every day in the hospital. It might be very interesting to start off your scientific career by beginning to write case reports of very interesting findings or very interesting presentations of pathology, or maybe an emerging new disease. Like, for example, the case of HIV in the 1980s started all because of a particular case report or case series that was published in the US, where they were seeing Kaposi sarcoma in a group of people who lived a homosexual lifestyle. that was the start of everything about HIV, a case report. And obviously, even recently with COVID, people noticed some particular funny presentation of pneumonia in November in China, and started everything which we've gone through within the past 3 years. So a case report can be very interesting for clinicians. And if it's just one case, then it's a case report or a case study. But if you have a series of people who present with the same pathology, then you might want to put maybe 2 or 3 cases together, and then you, in this particular instance, will be writing a case series and no longer a single case study or a single case report. So you should know the difference between a case report and case series. Images in medicine or in clinical medicine that some journals now do accept. So we usually say a picture speaks 1,000 words. So it's, if you've got a visual image, it could be a photo, it could be a video recording or an audio recording. So many journals now do accept these forms of presentation. It could be showing a particular portion of the body, an image. It could be a diagnostic image, maybe from radiology. The most important thing is that this should really comply with ethical guidelines. And usually they are combined to be published with other case reports and case series. Talking about reviews, there are 4 main types of reviews, which we're going to go about rapidly for you to know. You've got narrative reviews, where the purpose is just really to talk about a particular topic of interest. There is no predetermined research question. There is no particular search strategy. It is not written in a systematic manner. You decide the different headings that you want to put inside. And narrative reviews do not follow any specific protocol. So this can be really interesting for people kicking off their research writing careers as well. If you identify a particular topic of interest, you can start reading around and see how you can put together and summarize that particular information. As I said, there is no specified research question. Yeah, you just want to describe or talk about a particular topic of interest to you. So steps to conduct a narrative review. Yeah, you conduct your search, you identify the keywords which you want to talk about, you read the different abstracts and articles that you've identified, and then you summarize your findings in your report. Not very interesting nowadays. What is beginning to be interesting is when you now want to conduct a systematic literature review. And as I said, the main thing here is that you have a pre-specified research question, and then you read other articles around that particular research question, and then you're writing to try to answer that particular research question. You have a clearly defined protocol that is set up in advance and a specific search strategy. And there is this principle that scientific literature review should follow, which I'm going to send the slides, so you're going to have this. You should be transparent, and you should do a total full coverage of your literature search. A scoping review, how does it differ? Is that it identifies a specific research question, but here you are trying to create a map of the evidence. What is currently known about this particular question? And it follows some systematic methodology. So in terms of your protocol has to be written in advance. Your search strategy has to be known. And at times it should be registered. Not at times, your scoping review should be registered and in a particular registry. And we can talk about research registries later on. And then you have, as I said, the steps. You have to identify research question, you develop your protocol, you conduct your literature search, you screen the studies which you're going to include into your protocol, You go through them, you assess them, you appraise them, and then you extract the data. The key thing here is that you're not doing a meta-analysis, so you're not pulling the data to analyze, but you just synthesize and report your data using charts and tables. So that's for a scoping review. And it differs with a systematic review and meta-analysis in the fact that in a meta-analysis, you have everything as in a scoping review. So a well-written protocol, which is registered, it may be published beforehand. You have a search strategy. But for a systematic review, you follow these particular steps that are in the PRISMA guidelines, and your evidence, or in the part of the analysis, it's the part where you pull your data to create single estimates. So that is the meta-analysis part of it. So as I said, it's a systematic appraisal of the different research articles which you have already selected using a predefined protocol, and you use statistical methods to get or to have at the end a full estimate, and then you're trying to answer your particular question that has been well defined in your protocol beforehand, registered, well-defined search strategy, well before you start any writing project. So that's that for systematic review. For the expert-driven exposés, as I mentioned, essays, commentary articles, these are really at times reserved for senior authors. I'll explain why. But I believe as a young researcher, you can also write essays. So an essay just simply puts out analysis of a particular scientific problem. And you write your essay based on factual information. So of course you have to dig into the literature, but also you can bring out your personal opinions on the particular topic. And so certain journals at times do accept essays. So you have to check your journal website, and you need to have a plan for your essay, and you write your essay. A commentary article, these are usually solicited. What do I mean? Editors of a particular journal will write to a particular author based on his expertise in the domain, will ask for a commentary article at times. So that's why I said they are commission responses. But I'm going to talk about other types of commentary articles in a minute. And so the author will be asked to, so let's say Dr. 𝐒𝐚𝐫𝐤𝐬𝐡𝐨𝐵 has published a particular work. The editor can write and say, Dr. Gatti, can you do a commentary on this particular paper that has just been published? So that's one case. Or the editor can just write to an author and ask for a commentary article for a particular published work in his journal. So you have those two ways can happen. You have perspective articles. This, as I said, they are really for senior authors where editors write to them to write a particular article. These are very short articles, usually around 700 words for commentaries, perspectives, and opinions, where the author here is just trying to bring new insight, bring new information, and to stir discussions in the scientific milieu. You have opinions, as I said, where the author is trying to offer a constructive criticism of a work that has already been published in the journal, trying to bring out the strengths and weaknesses and how he assessed the strengths and weaknesses. And the aim here is to provoke discussions and to challenge the status quo of knowledge in that particular domain. Editorials are now written by journal editors, where they choose a particular domain of science, maybe that their journal is focused on, and they write editorials based on current events in science. But as I said, the key issue in writing editorials are, the editors have to be balanced. They don't have to take a side. So these are really expert driven. Then, as I said, letter to the editor. Anyone can write a letter to the editor. Let me say there is a recent publication in, I don't know, in Science Journal on a particular topic, which you think you have an opinion, and which you think there is maybe something which is not very clear in that article. You can write a letter to the editor to for that particular article to bring out your point of view, and then usually the editors will send that letter to the that letter you have written to the authors of that particular paper for them to write a rebuttal, and then both of you, usually both letters, that is your original letter and the rebuttal of the authors, are published together. So to end up, as I said, to know the different types of research papers, this is the slide you need to keep in mind. These slides are going to be shared at the end of the presentation. So when you know this, then you can have in mind, what do I need to write for a particular journal? So thank you very much. And any questions, we can open it up and then answer some questions and discuss. I believe this will be the most interesting part. Thank you. Yep. So any particular question for us to discuss about something that was not clear? You want me to highlight on any particular thing we've discussed so far on the different types of research papers? Now is the time to ask your question. What you can do is that you can raise your hand. I hope you know how to raise your hand on Zoom. And then I'm going to pick on you, and then you can ask your question. Or you can just unmute yourself, and then I will try to coordinate it properly. Radio silence. We are still within the hour, so we have about 10 minutes for discussions. Yes, Amuza from Kampala.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I was just having an inquiry with regards to case reports and case study.
Yes.
You talked about the different types, that is the single case and multiple cases. So for the case of a single case, does it mean, for example, I come across an interesting occurrence, I just summarize it and then submit it for publishing, or there are also steps that you go through in as far as summarizing that case report before being published? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amuza. Great question. So that's very important question. Since this was not a particular presentation on case report, the objective here was just to broaden your minds and to give you, the landscape of the different research papers that are possible for you as a young scientist. So, but now let's talk about the case report briefly. You have a particular case. So journals, one of the key things that you would learn as we go on is that you must read the instructions to the authors in the journal that you want to publish. So, but there is also a codified way of writing a case report. You would learn of something called the care guidelines, but generally, if you're a medical doctor, basically you're doing like a clinical observation report for your particular case. The most important thing you should bear in mind for a case report is that you should respect strict ethical guidelines. For example, if you're including pictures, you should have a formal single consent from the patient that you're writing the report on. And journals at times, this is the particular case where certain journals will want to see the consent of the patient. Usually in original research, editors, reviewers would want to just see that your research was scrutinized or that you received an ethical approval, an ethical clearance. Maybe you have an ethical clearance number. It was screened by an ethical review board or an ethical committee, depending on the country where you're from. The names vary. And they would not want to see consent of individual patients. But in the case of a case report, you must have a consent, and at times you would be asked to deliver a consent, especially if you're adding images. So there are particular guidelines that exist for you to write case reports. Read about the care guidelines, and obviously on one particular point, we are going to talk about how to write case reports. So that's just what I would want to say in this particular session. I don't know if that answers a bit of your query.
Thank you very much. It's clear now.
All right, thank you. I would pick, since there is no question and we have some time, I'm going to pick on Aguns, Dr. Aguns joining us, who will be one of my faculty this morning, I would say. Have you ever written a case report?
Thank you very much, Dr. Kate. Yes, I have written a case report, but it hasn't gotten yet to the publishing stage. And I did recognize, most of the steps you mentioned are some of the steps I took in writing my case report. So I'm in accordance, I'm in agreement with you. The first thing I did, of course, was identify a case of interest, in the hospital. And of course, second thing I did was to read through journals and get the format on writing case reports, because you do not want to write your case reports and put a lot of energy, and then it gets rejected because you did not get consent prior, or you did not, provide a certain level of anonymity. So yeah, the steps you have highlighted are very important in writing different papers, including case reports, and following them to the latter, of course, is a good recipe for you to get published.
Great, thank you very much. That's important, especially for people who are in the hospitals, who are seeing patients regularly. Case reports would be a good way to start. My very first case report was published back in 2014, while I was working at the regional hospital in Bafoussam. It was the case of a 13-month-old toddler who presented with diabetes. So that in itself was very interesting to see diabetes being diagnosed in a 13-month-old baby. So yeah, that was the case, and we published it. And it's good to know that that baby girl, she's still alive today and on insulin and living well. So several years after. So
I think I read that case. Did you publish in PMJ?
Yes, it was published in PMJ.
Yeah, I think I read it. And I think that's one of the, I'm going to talk about that later on, but that's also one very important step in publishing whatever paper. And that is to read, similar articles on your subject, so that you have an idea of how to frame your paper in order to reduce the chances of it getting rejected.
Yeah, very, very, very important. You would not want to publish without reading to find out what is already happening in the scientific world. How are other papers framed? How are they written? What are the different instructions that are needed to write a good case? And it gets complicated if, as I mentioned, you're adding images to them, then it really gets complicated. You should really read around instructions to be able to write a valid case report. Well, I don't want to make this a case report discussion, but Dr. Amazu, as I said, you should not just write a case report of everything you see. Most journals will not accept. It should be interesting. It should be a new presentation. It could be a new way of diagnosing. It could be a new methodology. It could be an unusual presentation. Oh, so those are the things that would maybe a medical student or a medical doctor to say, I need to write a case report to make this case known to the scientific world. Yes, Dr. Ashu George.
Hello, Dr. Kate. Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to join you on this amazing topic. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about case reports. I just wanted to ask something else.
Yes.
Regarding publishing papers as a whole. So my question has to do with, choosing which journal to publish, because I understand that, okay, there's some financial cost to some to publishing in some journals. And also as early career researchers, I suppose the quality of the paper you're putting out there also has to match with which journal can accept it. So in your own experience, would you recommend starting with low profile peer-reviewed journals, or just choosing anyone that fits with the topic? How do you just go about choosing which journal?
Thank you very much, George, for that question. I think you're running further than your shadow here, because we are going to come to that eventually. And so I would say keep your appetite hanging.
All right.
Keep your appetite hanging. We are going to come to that in a minute. I think we have five or six main presentations this morning and discussion sessions. So we are going to deal with that properly when the time comes. Yes, so keep that hanging. Maybe a last question for this session before we get into something else. No question. I would really want us to stick to time, and is it 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock? And so we are going to move into the second presentation, if that is okay with you.